The last thing I need is the added stress of printing family photos. Fortunately, I use Chatbooks, the app that automatically turns my Instagram photos into adorable photo books. Think about all those photos you've already posted to your Instagram account. That's a whole collection of Chatbooks waiting to happen. Just connect your account, review, and order. Holy sweet Meghan Markle, it worked! Chatbooks. Live your life and let Chatbooks print it, one $10 book at a time.
Welcome to Silicon Slopes Live. We're joined by Tami Steggell, who's the founder and CEO of Ruby Snap Fresh Cookies. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. We'll all be better after this because you brought cookies.
True.
And we'll see who gets the entire box. We've got some interns coming, so.
Whoever has the best arm wrestle game.
There it is. All right, well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Let's just jump in with the founding story. Where did this idea come from? You just mentioned before we jumped on air that you're chasing your dream. So give us the history of it.
So I started out as an architectural designer. I was a really avid cyclist at the time. I do love the outdoors. I love to wake surf and cycle, and tonight I'm going to play kickball. And when I want to put something in my body, I want to make sure that I feel good afterwards. And I do love treats, but I don't like treats that make me feel bad. So I started experimenting with fruits and vegetables and clean nut butters and pure chocolates and vanilla beans and all things, real ingredients that created real flavor. And that's how it started for me. And after 9/11, we actually started in 2008 in a really bad economy. So 2020 was a little bit familiar to us. But that's how I began, is just creating recipes for me that I liked, which are typically really peculiar because I like to experiment with, extreme ideas. So that's how I began.
Awesome. And you took a risk. Obviously, you had a steady, good job as an architect, designer. Just like every other entrepreneur, you have to make that leap. What were some of the fun parts of taking that leap, and what were some of the things you just did not anticipate being so not fun?
Well, I think for me it's fun to take these comfort zone vacations and step out of what's comfortable and always push the boundaries. And I kind of say that to my staff. It's time to get uncomfortable. It's time to keep growing. And so I really liked the idea of doing something I hadn't done before. There's always going to be a lot of learning curves, and I really appreciated not knowing everything. Otherwise, I might not have done it. I might have chickened out. But you're always in a learning curve. You're never not learning, and if you aren't learning, you're not growing.
Yeah. All right, so you guys have a really cool brand, great designs, social medias. I won't say easy, but it might be easier with cookies versus like software or something. And there's also like a World War II kind of theme associated with that and the brand. What's the story behind that?
The story behind the World War II theme is I just wanted to celebrate yesteryear when real ingredients were real and we weren't using shortening and artificial ingredients yet. We were still kind of homesteading. We still went out and got what was fresh from the day. So we do use a lot of like root vegetables that we roast, and like a beet reduction, for example, to color things pink, or we try to keep everything clean. And it was just my ode to yesteryear. It was my ode to the greatest generation, and I just want to be great. I want to be great at what I did. I want to be great like the greatest generation. So that's why I picked the World War II theme.
Yeah, I love it. And my grandparents were all in World War II, and so I got 30 years or so of their food and cooking, and they've passed some of that on to like my mother, but it definitely tasted better.
Yeah, I always kind of daydream too about I should have been a farmer's daughter in the 50s or something. Like I like that connection to fresh.
Yeah, so that's kind of a really cool design and story behind that. And then you have a slogan, you want my cookies.
Yes.
Strong slogan. And I don't think very many people would say, yeah, actually I don't, because they're very good. What's the story behind that, and how do you kind of leverage that slogan?
Well, again, I try to point all things to the fact that we're fresh, because that's what really sets us apart from other cookie bakeries that have come along since we were founded. And you want our cookies because real ingredients taste really good, and that's how we deliver flavor. We don't do it through anything artificial, and we create the wow factor, and that's why you want our cookies, because we love when people come in and they're first timers, and we give, before COVID, unlimited samples, and they would take a bite and they'd be like, wow, they just don't expect what's coming, and that's how we developed our slogan.
Got it. All right, so for folks that haven't been to your location, it's in Salt Lake City, right?
Correct.
And to do that, you've got to have a kitchen,
Yes.
have a staff, or just you work 24/7. You need some signs and all of this stuff, right?
Right.
The basic blocking and tackling. Do you remember kind of your first customers, or maybe your first bigger customer that was they're buying a lot of cookies, and how did that feel when all that work was actually resulting in sales?
It was really exciting, because in the beginning I was the baker, the cashier, the decorator, the dough maker, everything. And I remember in the very beginning I thought, if I could just make $300 a day, I'd be rich, just that idea back in 2008. And I remember our first big order was with Macon International, and it was for 350 dozen. And then our next big order was like 2,000 with New Skin, and then our next bigger order was 10,000 dozen with Cox Automotive. And with each time, we learned what our capabilities were, and it was really exciting. And so we know that we can do it. We know that we can do it well, and that's kind of become our specialty now. From the beginning to today is those corporate custom special orders that are just sort of a show off for us.
Yeah, and it works really well. So that's interesting, because you've got people that wander in and buy one or two cookies, but then at some point you got a huge order, several hundred cookies, and we were talking beforehand, you have to be good at fractions and math to do that. So when that first big order came, was it kind of a surprise, or did you kind of know it was coming, and were you ready from an actual kitchen standpoint to do it?
Yeah, we're always ready. We have a production kitchen that we've eventually moved off-site. It's across the alley in a building next door, and our bakery orders what they need that day. It's produced, and we deliver it fresh. And then for the bigger orders, I do everything in kilograms and in Excel spreadsheets, and I can scale to size as needed, and we can produce about 500 dozen an hour when we do have those bigger orders.
So the Cookie Monster would really like hanging out there. Dumb joke. All right.
His paradise.
Yeah. So in addition to all this, you're a mother of 7.
Yep.
And that would be busy in any normal life. And you've coupled that with being an entrepreneur of a scaling, growing business. How do you manage that?
Well, it's really important to have balance and self-care. And I was really good at it for a lot of years, and I had a kind of a no phone zone, that when I went home, it was a no phone zone. I just quit working, and I dedicated all of my time to my family. And but it's also, every once in a while I get off balance and I become a workaholic, and I have to remember to pull in the reins and get on my bike, get out and cycle. And I was getting a little off track in 2020, just trying to always stay ahead of the innovative curve to keep people interested in Ruby Snap. And so I have to do things that make me get out, sign up for a ride, sign up for a kickball team, go to Pilates, pay for something and go do it. And that's how I keep my balance.
That's great, and easier said than done. How many cookies do you currently have on the menu? Do you know?
On the menu, we have 20 all day, every day, and then we have two specials that we introduce each month. This month, we have a coconut carrot curry and a black rice lemongrass. And then during 2020, we introduced Whoopie Pie Fridays just to have something new and fun to give people an excuse to get out and come see us and not be afraid of the world.
Right.
So that's new. So that gives us 23 cookies every single month on a rotation schedule. But all in all, I don't even know how many cookies we have. Probably about 90 recipes now.
Wow. All right, so how do you and your team decide on which ones make the cut and end up on the menu? And which ones do you kind of just let drift off into the sunset because they weren't successful?
I think not successful is a relative term. Sometimes we have just that cult following cookie. One of them right now is Sachi. It's a sesame tahini. And it's not a huge seller, but I love it, so it's important to me, so I keep it there for the cult followers. We also have a chili de arbo cookie. It's a spicy cocoa, kind of a mole style cookie that I've left in the case for a lot of years. And every once in a while, we'll get a big giant wedding order for a crazy cookie. But usually I decide, and I do it because this is my dream journey. And so I feel like if I do something that's important to me, there's a whole ton of other me's out in the world that are going to also like it.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned a lot of interesting ingredients that a lot of people probably wouldn't couple together. What's the process of coming up with recipes? And is that you as well?
Yes, that's my true love, is the recipe development. And so usually it might be an inspiration of a place that I've been. So the coconut carrot curry was inspired by a dish that I had while I was visiting Bali, picking up some vanilla beans. It's called nasi campur, and it's a tempeh dish with sambals. It has nothing to do with coconut carrot curry. But that was my inspiration. One day I was getting a massage, and they used some oil, and it inspired me to make a tangerine cream, which I'm going to be doing a tangerine cream whoopie next month. It could be anything.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So what's your favorite cookie of all time?
Well, they're all created for me, so I truly love them all. There's only maybe 2 or 3 that I'm not in love with, but I created them for the public, and the public loves them. So my all-time favorite, it's too hard to say.
What is the all-time favorite of the balance sheet? Which ones sell the best?
You won't believe it, but in grocery stores, we make a series of pre-portioned frozen bake-at-home cookie dough. Our #1 seller, 4-to-1 year after year, is our basic chocolate chip cookie.
I would believe that. That's kind of my favorite.
And I'm always like, what? There's so much out there that, why would you go straight to chocolate chip when you can have a lime dough with a cheesecake center topped off with a lime curd,
Yes.
or a fresh grapefruit cookie, or...
Probably because most people aren't as innovative and imaginative as you, would be my guess.
They're a little bit chicken, that's why we give the unlimited samples.
Yeah. And then mine's probably, like, I like chocolate chip cookies just probably for the nostalgia, and it's hardwired, would be my guess. But
Yeah.
all these other cookies sound great too. All right, so you kind of hit on a little bit of growing the business, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got the frozen dough.
Yes.
In a lot of supermarkets.
Yes.
So people can grab that and then do it at home. That's probably a pretty big revenue stream for you. How did you know when it was time to scale into these new verticals?
Well, my original model was the frozen cookie dough because I was always a working professional and a busy mom, and I wanted to be able to come home and bake cookies quickly. So whenever I had time to make cookies, I would make big batches, freeze them, and then I could, if I had a bunco club or anything, a book club or something, I could just bake them and they'd be ready. So that was my original model. But I realized quickly that people, to have consumer confidence, needed to sample them. So I sampled them, and quickly we became a bakery. And the bakery portion became more popular initially. So the scaling has been easy for me, and I don't know if it's because it's the methodical side of my brain in terms of the way I think and how I just mechanically work it exponentially. So the scaling kind of came a little bit naturally to me. Did you have a different idea about that question?
No,
though?
yeah, that answers it. So, what's the process like as you interact with a big supermarket chain? Because it's like shelf space is, I don't know how grade A down here is not as good.
Right, yeah.
Do you handle those negotiations? Do you have someone else on your team that does like the biz dev side? How did that all work for you?
Well, yeah, I like to be really hands-on and really stay involved in just about everything. So just about every decision starts with me or passes through me. And I did develop all of our relations with Harmon's Grocery, and they are a like-minded company, and we have the same cultural fit with our customers. And so we treat each other really exceptional. So our relationship there and our space in their doors has been just phenomenal. We have an end cap in every store, and we also have anywhere from 3 to 5 shelves in the ice cream aisle. As we expand outside of Utah, then you have to have a distributor in place, you have to have a broker in place. It's not often that you can just go direct you to the grocer, so you have to have a broker in place. And you have to know, that's when it becomes trickier as a CEO in understanding your numbers and the way that they work, because there's a 30% fee here, a 30% fee here, a 5% fee here, and then before you know it, your cookies are $10.99 a bag. So, but that's reality, and distribution is reality as well.
Yeah. For I guess Ruby Snap cookies to end up in a supermarket in New York, that you're going to get nickel and dimed along the way, right?
Yep. Everybody has to make a living.
Yep. All right. So very innovative, just like every good company needs to be. And you mentioned, there's competitors that didn't used to exist that exist now.
Yep.
As you forecast the future, how do you and your team look at that? Is it a year? Is it 3 years? How do you guys stay ahead of the curve and keep innovating?
So we keep in mind that we have to do what's important to us, what's important to our internal culture, what's important to our brand standards, what's important to our company, and what's important to our cultural fit. And all of those play a really important factor. And we want to be Ruby Snap. We don't want to be like someone else. And so we kind of put our blinders on to the outside pressure of what other people are doing. And people will say, well, don't you want to grow like them? And I'm like, no, I want to grow like us, and which is really thoughtful. So when we pick a grocer, it's going to be a high-end, fine grocer, somebody who cares about what they're purchasing. They want quality over quantity, and they're not coupon shoppers, and they are looking for that unique, better experience. So we think of those factors, and we just stay true to our story, and we don't ever try to play that silly game of who's better than who, because we just want to be better than ourselves every day. And that's how we approach our forecast planning. And also, we want to maintain a lifestyle kind of company. So we don't want to grow so fast that we lose our sense of self and our sense of family and our sense of balance. And so we put all those factors into the way that we plan the future.
Yeah.
And we put it up for a team vote in management meetings to make sure that everybody's on board, because if somebody's not on board, you're not going to have a successful journey.
Yeah. Very, very critical, or there'll just be a dead anchor and you'll wonder why it's not working, and it'll be that person. That's not helpful. So as far as like commodity prices, right? We were talking about this a little bit before. What are some of the outside factors that have impacted your business over the years, and how do you kind of mitigate those?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things we're having trouble with. I can't go to Bali and bring vanilla beans, so what do? I have to get vanilla beans local in 2020. And things like dairy is always up and down. Things like disease to plants that affect peanut butter. And there's always, in agriculture, you can purchase agriculture futures and you can secure a good price right now, but with what we do, we don't know what we're going to be doing in the future sometimes. But we do, we will purchase things by the pallet, but we have those pallets coming fresh all the time. And as far as, there's always factors of economy, like gas prices go up, so surcharges go up and delivery fees go up and everything goes up. And we've tried really hard to hold a palatable pricing standard amongst all of those increases while still maintaining a good profit margin, and it's just always a fine balance.
Yeah, the Excel spreadsheets are working overtime, I'd imagine. So a little tidbit of advice for prospective entrepreneurs, whether it's a bakery, food and beverage, restaurant, or any entrepreneurial journey. What are one or two kind of critical things that you could, with 100% confidence, pass on to the next generation?
If you're not willing to take a risk, you're not ready to be an entrepreneur. And because every day is a risk, no matter what. I'm 13 years in, every day is still a risk. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to fail, you're not ready to be an entrepreneur. If you're not willing to put in what it takes, I mean, you have to love it. It better be your passion, because I put in a lot of long hours, but I do it willingly and happily. And I don't expect that of every employee, but I do expect it of myself. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, those are the things you have to be willing to do.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right, so the best way to eat Ruby Snap cookie, is it with ice cream? Is it with milk? Is it by itself? What do you prefer?
Well, all of the above. It's really fun to cook them fresh at home and have them hot cookie a la mode. But any way you eat them, they're amazing.
I agree. Well, very cool. It's fun to have different types of companies up here on stage telling their story. It's a fantastic story. If there's people out there that would like to buy bulk for events or for their employees, what's the best way for them to get in contact?
You could reach out to heyruby@rubysnap.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today, and thank you for bringing cookies.
You bet. Enjoy.